important to know that there were conditions, kind of classic push factors, that would cause a Chinese to decide to leave their home village to begin with. And so these included overpopulation, mid-19th century, overpopulation, European incursions, famine. There also was a mid-century rebellion known as the Taiping Rebellion that caused a lot of displacement. And the Qing government in China actually used the coolie trade as a way of getting rid of some of the rebels who they had captured. So a lot of displacement, and people were migrating everywhere during this period, elsewhere in the world, to the Americas. And also, but the first migration would always be from someone's village to a larger market town or port city. And so those who ended up in Hong Kong or one of the other treaty ports could end up on a coolie ship bound for the Americas. And often they didn't know where they were going. They thought they told they were going to the Gold Mountain and just assumed that was San Francisco. And so it wasn't until they actually landed in Havana, in the harbor, that they realized they were in Cuba. And once they got to Cuba, they signed contracts. Most of the contracts were for 8 years. And the contracts promised them a certain amount of clothing, medical illness, food, and a very minimal wage per month. And in return for that, they would work for 8 years and were guaranteed return passage after the 8-year period. What actually happened was, and this is largely because Cuba was still right in the midst of African slavery, in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s. So they were actually treated virtually like slaves. The contracts were actually taken from them. Their identity papers were taken from them. The terms of the contract were blatantly violated. They were beaten, they were chained, they were forced to work more days and more hours than stipulated in the contracts. Probably one of the worst violations was the practice of recontracting. So after a Chinese completed an 8-year period of work, if they survived the atrocious conditions, they would be forced to sign another contract. And if they didn't, they would be sent to a local jail where they would work on labor projects. So it kind of created this cycle that was very similar to slavery, although different in many respects too, because there was an end point, and the practice of indenture as far as the Chinese in Cuba and Peru ended after 1874.